The neural inhibitor hummed against Commander Kalen Voss's skull as he surveyed the ruins of New Arcturus, where others might have felt horror at the crystallized corpses of 3 million colonists. He experienced only tactical assessment. The Velthari had struck with their emotion-draining weapons again, leaving behind a world of perfect, silent death. "Commander," his aide whispered, voice trembling despite her own inhibitor. "The readings, ... they're off the charts, whatever they used here. It's beyond anything we've encountered." Kellen's pale eyes swept across the cityscape, each building a monument to frozen human potential. The inhibitors had been humanity's answer to the Velthari's psychic warfare devices that severed the connection between emotion and action, allowing soldiers to function where others would collapse into catatonic despair or rage-induced madness. The cost was steep, a generation of warriors who knew duty but not passion, strategy but not love, victory but not joy. He had worn his inhibitor for 12 years, since the day he watched his homeworld burn. The device had saved his sanity, allowed him to become humanity's most effective commander against the alien threat. But standing here, surrounded by the crystalline remains of dreams, he wondered if salvation and damnation were the same thing. "Sir, we have a survivor signal," Lieutenant Corvina reported, her voice clinical as manufactured snow. "Section 7 Alpha, Residential District. Impossible." The Velthari weapons left no survivors. Their emotional cascade effect was universally fatal to human consciousness. Yet the bioscanner insisted otherwise. Detecting a single human heartbeat in the wasteland of silence, they found her in the ruins of what had once been a school. A young woman with auburn hair and eyes like storm clouds, cradling something in her arms. She looked up as they approached, and Kalen felt his inhibitor spike with warning signals. There was something about her gaze that seemed to pierce through the neural dampening, reaching for parts of him he'd forgotten existed. "Please," she whispered, and her voice carried a weight that made his chest tighten in ways the inhibitor shouldn't have allowed. "Please, don't let them take her to..." In her arms lay a child, perhaps 6 years old, breathing but unconscious. The girl's small face was peaceful, untouched by the crystalline death that had claimed everyone else. Kellen's tactical mind cataloged the impossibilities to survivors. No signs of protective equipment, no explanation for their immunity. But something else stirred in him as he looked at the woman's face, a recognition that went deeper than memory. She was beautiful, yes, but more than that. She was unbroken in a world of shattered things, warm in a landscape of cold death. "What's your name?" he asked, surprised by the gentleness in his own voice. "Lirelei," she said, and for the first time in 12 years, Kalen felt his inhibitor falter. "And this is Mira. She's all I have left." The tears that rolled down Lirelei's cheeks caught the alien sunlight like liquid starfire, and Kalen found himself staring at them with an intensity that had nothing to do with tactical assessment. Each drop seemed to carry a universe of pain and hope, loss and desperate love emotions his inhibitor should have rendered meaningless but somehow made achingly real. "We'll get you out of here," he promised, and meant it with a conviction that terrified him. The medbay aboard the Inexorable buzzed with activity as Dr. Valeris ran her 15th scan on the survivors. Kalen watched through the observation window, his inhibitor maintaining its steady hum while something deeper churned beneath its influence. "The readings are impossible," Valeris reported, her clinical tone matching his own. "Both subjects show complete immunity to Velthari emotional cascade weapons. The woman Lirela has neural patterns I've never seen. The child is even more unusual." "Explain." "The girl isn't just immune, Commander. She's generating some kind of psychic shield. It's crude, instinctive, but it's there. She protected them both during the attack." Kalen studied the sleeping child through the reinforced glass. Myra looked utterly ordinary, a small human girl with dark hair and pale skin. Yet the biomonitors around her showed energy readings that defied explanation. And the woman? Her neural activity suggests she's experiencing the full spectrum of human emotion, without any dampening or artificial enhancement. Commander, she's feeling everything. The loss of her world, fear for the child, grief for the dead end. It's not driving her insane. If anything, it seems to be making her stronger. The implications struck him like plasma fire. For over a decade, humanity had believed that emotion was a weakness to be suppressed, a vulnerability the Velthari could exploit. But here was living proof that the opposite might be true. "I need to speak with her," he said. "Sir, I should warn you, proximity to her seems to be affecting inhibitor efficiency. 3 of my staff have reported ... irregularities." Kalen nodded curtly and entered the medical bay. Lirelei sat beside Mira's bed, her hand gently stroking the girl's hair. When she looked up at him, he felt that same strange flutter in his chest, like something long dormant trying to wake. "How is she?" he asked. "Tired. The thing she did, it took everything out of her." Lirelei's voice carried layers of exhaustion and worry. "She's not my daughter, you know. Not by blood. I found her during the first evacuation attempts, clinging to her dead mother. I should have left her, should have saved myself. But I couldn't. I looked at her face, and I just... couldn't. Why? Are you telling me this? Because you're fighting them wrong?" She met his gaze directly, and he felt his inhibitor spike again. "I can see it in your eyes, or rather, what's not in them. You've made yourselves empty to fight monsters, but emptiness can't defeat what they represent. We've won 17 major engagements. You've survived 17 battles," she corrected. "There's a difference. The Velthari don't just want to kill us, Commander. They want to prove that consciousness without connection is meaningless. Every world they take, every person they crystallize, it's all to demonstrate that sentient beings are just complex machines. By cutting away your emotions, you're proving their point." Kalen felt something crack inside him, a hairline fracture, in walls he'd built over years of warfare. Our emotions made us weak, made us targets. No. Lirelei stood, moving closer, and her proximity sent warning signals cascading through his neural implant. "Your emotions make you human, and being human is the only weapon that can truly defeat them." She reached out, her fingers barely brushing his cheek, and for a moment the inhibitor's hum faltered completely. In that instant, Kalen felt the ghost of everything he'd lost: his family, his world, his capacity for love and joy and hope. The pain was staggering, but beneath it lay something he'd forgotten existed, the fierce, burning determination to protect what mattered. "I can't," he whispered, stepping back as the inhibitor reasserted control. "If I turn it off, I'll lose my effectiveness. My crew needs... Your crew needs a leader who remembers what they're fighting for," Lirelei said softly. "Not just survival, but the right to feel, to love, to be gloriously, messily, wonderfully human." An alarm klaxon suddenly blared through the ship. Kellen's tactical mind immediately shifted to threat assessment mode, but for just a moment, he caught himself looking back at Lirelei, with something that might have been longing. "Commander, to the bridge," came the urgent call. "Velthari ships detected. They're coming for the survivors." The bridge of the Inexorable thrummed with barely controlled tension as the Velthari fleet materialized from hyperspace. 12 ships, each one a crystalline predator designed to harvest the emotional energy of entire worlds. Against them, Kalen had only his battlecruiser and 2 escort frigates. "They're not attacking, sir," reported Navigator Quintus, his voice flat with inhibitorinduced.com. "They single quotes, waiting." "Scanning our ship," added Weapons Officer Narita. "Deep scans, sir. They're looking for something specific." Kalen knew what. The survivors. Somehow, the Velthari had detected the anomalous readings from Lirelei and Myra. The aliens had come not for conquest, but for study or elimination. "Incoming transmission," Communications Officer Dex announced. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a Velthari consciousness node, a crystalline entity that pulsed with cold, alien light. When it spoke, its voice resonated through the ship's hull, like the sound of breaking glass. Human vessel, you carry specimens of interest. Surrender them, and your species may continue its ... limited existence. Kalen stepped forward, his inhibitor maintaining its steady hum. This is Commander Voss of the Terran Defense Force. You are in violation of Commander Voss. The alien's attention focused on him with uncomfortable intensity. The Severed One, you and your kind have proven our thesis admirably. Consciousness without connection, intelligence without integration. You have made yourselves into the very machines you feared becoming. The bridge crew remained perfectly still, their inhibitors preventing any emotional response to the alien's words. But Kalen felt something stir beneath his own dampening field, a flicker of rage, quickly suppressed. Your specimens represent a dangerous anomaly, the entity continued. They suggest that organic consciousness might achieve synthesis without our guidance. This cannot be permitted. Sir, Quintus reported quietly. They're charging weapons. All 12 ships. Kalen's tactical mind raced through possibilities. Even with the Inexorable's advanced systems, they couldn't survive a concentrated assault from a full Velthari battle group. His duty was clear: preserve the ship and crew. Standard protocol demanded immediate retreat, but standard protocol had been written by men wearing inhibitors, men who had forgotten what it meant to value something more than survival. Bridge to medical, he said. Dr. Valeris, bring our guests to the bridge. Now, sir. That's highly irregular. Do it. Minutes later, Lirelei entered the bridge with Mira in her arms. The child was awake now, her dark eyes taking in the scene with startling intelligence. The moment they appeared, every inhibitor on the bridge began emitting warning signals. My God, Narita whispered, her voice carrying the first hint of genuine emotion Kalen had heard from her in years. The Velthari entity's crystalline form pulsed brighter. The anomalies, fascinating. The adult maintains full emotional integration without psychic collapse. The child is something else entirely. Myra looked up at the alien image with calm curiosity. You're afraid, she said in a voice far too mature for her age. You're afraid we'll show everyone that you're wrong. Impossible. Fear is an inefficient emotion. We do not. You do, Mira continued, her small hand reaching out toward the screen. You're afraid that consciousness doesn't need to be cold to be strong, that love isn't weakness, that we can feel everything and still choose to fight. The alien's form flickered, its crystalline structure showing microfractures. Silence. You will be studied. Your anomaly will be understood and corrected. No, Kalen said, and his voice carried a conviction that surprised him. They won't. He reached up to his inhibitor control, his fingers trembling slightly. Around him, his bridge crew watched in shock as their unshakable commander hesitated on the edge of a choice that would define not just his fate, but humanity's future. Commander Lirelei said softly, trust yourself. Trust us. Trust what you know is right. The Velthari weapons reached full charge, their crystalline hulls gleaming with lethal potential. In 30 seconds, they would fire, and the Inexorable would become another monument to alien superiority. Kalen looked at Mira, at the fearless hope in her young eyes. He looked at Lirelei, at the tears still glistening on her cheeks, tears that had somehow reached through 12 years of neural dampening to touch his buried heart. He pressed the release. The inhibitor's deactivation hit Kalen like a psychic shockwave. 12 years of suppressed emotion crashed through his consciousness in a torrent of sensation and memory. The grief for his lost homeworld, the love for his fallen family, the fear and rage and desperate hope he'd locked away, all of it returned. In a single, overwhelming instant, he staggered, his hands gripping the command chair as his bridge crew watched in horror. But instead of the expected collapse into madness, something else happened. The emotions settled into place, like pieces of a puzzle finally finding their proper arrangement. He was still himself, still the tactical genius who had won 17 impossible battles, but now he was complete. "Sir." Navigator Quintus's voice carried a note of concern that his own inhibitor shouldn't have allowed. Around the bridge, every neural dampener was flickering, their effectiveness degraded by proximity to Mira's psychic field. I'm fine," Kalen said, and realized it was true. More than fine. For the first time in over a decade, he felt fully alive. The Velthari entity's crystalline form pulsed with agitation. Fascinating. The severed one chooses integration over efficiency. "You will regret this decision in the moments before your termination, will I?" Kalen stepped closer to the view screen, his newly awakened emotions fueling a confidence he hadn't felt in years. "Let me tell you what I see, creature. I see 12 ships crewed by beings so afraid of feeling that they crystallize entire worlds rather than risk genuine connection. You're not superior consciousness, you're cosmic cowards." The alien's form flickered more violently. "Impossible. We are evolution's pinnacle. We have transcended the chaos of organic emotion." "You've transcended nothing," Mira said, her child's voice carrying impossible authority. "You've just built really pretty prisons." Around the bridge, the inhibitors were failing one by one. Quintus gasped as a wave of wonder washed through him. Narita's eyes widened with rediscovered curiosity. Dex laughed as joy found him for the first time in a decade. "What's happening to us?" Narita whispered. "We're remembering," Lirelei said softly. "Remembering what we chose to forget." But the Velthari fleet was already moving, their weapons systems achieving full charge. The lead ship's crystalline hull began to glow with the cold light of annihilation. "They're firing," Quintus reported, his voice now carrying genuine fear alongside professional competence. Impact in 20 seconds. Kalen felt his tactical mind merge with his awakened emotions, creating something greater than either alone. The fear sharpened his focus. The love for his crew strengthened his resolve. The rage at years of alien oppression fueled his determination. "All ships, emergency acceleration," he commanded. "Pattern, Delta 7, Narita, target their lead ships. Resonance chamber. Quintus, take us through their formation. They won't risk hitting each other." The inexorable leaped forward like a thing alive, her crew responding with a precision born of perfect trust rather than mere efficiency. The escort frigates followed, their captains suddenly remembering why they'd chosen to serve in the first place. "Sir, the Velthari ships are breaking formation," Narita reported, her voice bright with battle joy. "They're confused. Our tactics don't match their predictions." Of course they didn't. The aliens had studied humanity's inhibited responses for years, building counter-strategies based on mechanical precision and logical assessment. They had no algorithms for actions driven by love, hope, and the fierce protectiveness of beings who had remembered their hearts. The first volley of crystalline death beams sliced through space where the human ships had been moments before. The inexorable spiraled through the enemy formation, her weapons finding targets with an accuracy that seemed almost supernatural. "How are we doing this?" Dex asked, in wonder. "We're fighting like humans," Kalen replied, watching as his frigates danced between the alien ships like poets of destruction. "We're fighting for something we love." Mira's hand found her small fingers warm against his palm. "Show them," she whispered. "Show them what we really are." On the view screen, the Velthari entity's crystalline form was fracturing, its perfect symmetry corrupted by something it couldn't understand or predict. Around it, the alien fleet struggled to respond to tactics driven by inspiration rather than algorithm. "This is impossible," the entity declared, its voice now carrying the first genuine emotion Kalen had ever heard from its species: fear. "Organic consciousness cannot achieve such coordination without our guidance. Watch us," Kalen said, and smiled. The battle raged across the star system as the human ships wove through the Velthari formation like dancers in a cosmic ballet. Each maneuver was perfect, not because it was calculated, but because it was felt, the instinctive harmony of beings who had rediscovered their connection to each other and themselves. Their flagship is falling back, Narita reported, her voice singing with combat euphoria. Hull breaches on decks 4 through 7. Sir, I don't think they've ever faced coordinated resistance like this. Kalen watched the tactical display with eyes that saw more than mere ship positions and weapon ranges. He saw the fear in the alien retreat patterns, the confusion in their scattered formation. The Velthari had spent millennia convincing themselves that emotion was weakness, that connection was inefficiency. Faced with humans who fought with their whole hearts, they were utterly unprepared. Commander Lirelei said softly, "Look at Mira." The child stood at the center of the bridge, her eyes closed in concentration. Around her, the air itself seemed to shimmer with invisible energy. The remaining inhibitors had gone completely silent, and the bridge crew moved with a synchronization that transcended mere training. She's connecting us, Kalen realized. Not controlling connecting. We're still ourselves, but we're also ... more. This is what they fear, Lirelei said, tears streaming down her face. This is what they've been trying to prevent across the galaxy. Not just individual consciousness, but unified consciousness. The ability to be separate and together, individual and collective, without losing either aspect. The Velthari entity on the view screen was fracturing visibly now, its crystalline perfection marred by spreading cracks. This cannot be organic. Consciousness is chaotic, inefficient, prone to error. We have observed this across 1,000 worlds. You've observed broken worlds, Mira said, opening her eyes to reveal depths that seemed far older than her years. Worlds where people forgot how to feel without losing themselves, how to think without abandoning their hearts. You've been harvesting the emotionally wounded, not emotionally whole. The child speaks truth, another voice said, and Kalen turned, and surprised to see Dr. Valeris entering the bridge. Her inhibitor lay in her hand, deactivated, and her face showed wonder rather than clinical detachment. "Sir, I've been analyzing the data from the survivors. They're not immune to Velthari weapons, they're proof against them. Their emotional integration creates a natural shield against psychic manipulation, because fear without love is paralysis," Lirelei added. "Love without courage is passivity, but together, balanced, they create something unbreakable." The tactical display showed the Velthari fleet in full retreat, their crystalline ships fleeing toward the system's edge. But the alien entity on the view screen remained, its fractured form pulsing with something that might have been curiosity. "You claim that consciousness can achieve synthesis without our guidance," it said. "Yet your species has spent decades severing the connection between thought and feeling. How do you explain this contradiction?" Kalen felt the truth settling into place like a key finding its lock. "We were afraid," he said simply. "We saw what your weapons could do to people who felt everything without wisdom, who loved without boundaries, who raged without purpose. So we went to the opposite extreme. We thought we had to choose between feeling and thinking, between connection and independence. But the choice was false," Mira said, her young voice carrying the weight of revelation. "We don't have to choose. We can be both. We can feel everything and still act wisely. We can love completely and still think clearly. We can be connected to each other and still be ourselves." The neural inhibitors weren't protection, Lirelei realized. They were training wheels. They kept us stable while we learned to balance. But we were never meant to wear them forever. Around the bridge, the crew was discovering this truth for themselves. Quintus calculated navigation solutions with mathematical precision enhanced by intuitive leaps. Narita's weapons targeting achieved impossible accuracy through a combination of technical skill and emotional connection to her crewmates. Decks coordinated. communications with an efficiency born of genuine care for every life, depending on his work. The Velthari entity's form stabilized slightly, its cracks sealing as it processed this new information. If this is true, if organic consciousness can achieve true synthesis, then our entire civilization is built upon a false premise. Yes, Kalen said gently, but that doesn't mean it's too late to change. We have crystallized billions of beings. We have denied ourselves the capacity for growth, for change, for the very thing you demonstrate now. How do we... The entity's voice carried a quality none of them had heard before. Vulnerability. How do we learn to feel? Mira stepped forward, her small hand reaching toward the view screen, the same way we all do, one tear at a time. In the silence that followed, the bridge of the inexorable became a nexus of possibility. The Velthari entity hung suspended on the view screen, its crystalline form flickering between the rigid perfection it had maintained for millennia and something more fluid, more organic, more alive. We do not know how to begin, the entity admitted, its voice carrying harmonics of fear and hope that no Velthari had expressed in recorded history. We have crystallized our own capacity for growth. We are, trapped in our own perfection. Lyra moved closer to the screen, her tear-stained face reflecting the alien's fractured light. That's not true. You're here, aren't you? You're talking to us instead of simply destroying us. That's already a choice your people have never made before. The child's influence extends even to us, the entity observed, its attention focusing on Mira. Her psychic field does not impose connection, it reveals connections that already exist. This is beyond our understanding. Understanding isn't the point, Myra said with the profound simplicity that only children possess. Feeling is. Understanding comes after. Kalen watched the exchange with a mixture of tactical awareness and deep compassion emotions that had once seemed contradictory, but now felt like natural partners. His crew around him was experiencing the same integration, their professional competence enhanced rather than diminished by their returned humanity. Commander, Dr. Valerius said quietly, I'm reading massive energy fluctuations from the Velthari fleet. They're not powering weapons, it's something else, something I've never seen before. On the tactical display, the alien ships had formed a perfect circle around the inexorable, but their positioning spoke of protection rather than threat. Each vessel pulsed with the same unstable energy signature, as if the crews were struggling with the same choice their representative faced. They're fighting their own conditioning, Kalen realized. The whole fleet. Myra's field is showing them what they've lost, and they're trying to remember how to feel. It is painful, the entity confirmed, its crystalline form now shifting continuously between states. We have spent so long believing that emotion was chaos, that connection was weakness, to discover that we have made ourselves into the very emptiness we sought to impose on others. The pain means you're healing, Lirelei said softly. Healing always hurts before it helps, but we have done such damage. Entire civilizations crystallized, billions of consciousness trapped in stasis, worlds rendered lifeless by our certainty that we were bringing order to chaos. How do we face such a legacy? The same way any being faces their mistakes, Kalen said, drawing on hard-won wisdom. One choice at a time, one act of repair at a time. One moment of choosing love over fear. The crystallized worlds, Mira said. Suddenly, her eyes bright with possibility. They're not dead, are they? They're just sleeping, waiting for someone to remember how to wake them up. The Velthari entity's form pulsed with what could only be described as shock. The crystallization process preserves consciousness in stasis. We believed it was irreversible. But if emotional integration can overcome our weapons' effects, they could be saved, Dr. Valerius breathed. All of them. Every world. Every person you've taken. They're still there, waiting. But it would require us to give up everything we have believed ourselves to be, the entity said. To choose uncertainty over certainty, growth over stasis, connection over isolation. We would have to become what we have spent eternity denying we could be. You would have to become alive, Lirelei said simply. The bridge fell silent as the weight of the moment settled over them. Here, in the space between stars, humanity and their oldest enemy stood at a crossroads that would determine the fate of countless worlds and species. I cannot make this choice for my people, the entity finally said, but I can make it for myself. What happened next would be remembered across the galaxy for generations to come. The Velthari entity's crystalline form began to soften, its rigid geometry flowing into something more organic, more fluid. The alien's consciousness, trapped for eons in perfect, sterile order, began to experience something it had never allowed itself to feel: change. I choose to feel, it declared, and its voice carried the tremor of genuine emotion. I choose to grow. I choose to help heal what we have broken. Around the system, the Velthari fleet responded to their representative's choice. One by one, their crystalline hulls began to shift and change, rigid perfection giving way to something that resembled art more than engineering. The aliens were becoming what they had always had the potential to be, not perfect machines, but living beings capable of both thought and feeling, logic and love. This is just the beginning, Kalen said, watching the transformation with wonder. There are so many worlds to heal, so many people to wake up. We will need teachers, the entity said, its newly fluid form now pulsing with colors that spoke of hope and determination. Beings who understand both the power and the responsibility of integrated consciousness. Mira smiled, her young face radiant with possibility. We can do that. We can show you how to feel without losing yourselves, how to love without losing your strength. But you have to want to learn. We do, the entity replied. We want to live. As the human and alien fleets began their journey back toward the first of the crystallized worlds, Kalen felt a profound sense of completion. The inhibitor in his hand had become a relic of humanity's fear, no longer needed by beings who had learned to balance thought and feeling, logic and love. What happens now? Lirelei asked, her hand finding his. Now we teach the galaxy how to cry, he said, watching as the first tears of joy rolled down her cheeks, and how to turn those tears into strength. In the vast darkness between stars, two species that had been enemies began the long journey toward becoming something greater than either could achieve alone, a true synthesis of consciousness, emotion, and hope. The galaxy would never be the same, and somewhere in the crystallized silence of 1,000,000 sleeping worlds, consciousness began to stir, waiting for the moment when love would finally teach the universe how to feel. The end.